a One for All voucher. Some of the texts and WhatsApps coming into us this morning. John, it's so sad to hear what that family and all families are going through. I'm sure there's gallons of tears flowing. It's terrible that families have to travel to other countries when we are supposed to have one of the best hospitals in the world that'll never be finished. God bless them all. And another listener says, I'm just listening here to that lady. I'm reliving the day our eldest son was diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer at 18 years of age. Those words are the worst that any parent can ever hear. The charities that support families are amazing, and even now that our son is a year in remission, they keep in touch with us. I wish Sophie and her family all the best. Children and young adults that go through cancer are superheroes. That comes in from CK to us this morning. I want to move on though, because we're joined in studio by Dave McCarthy for our financial advice. Dave, good morning. Thanks for joining us in the programme today. Our first question into us. I recently went into my bank to transfer money to another institution. I got the riot act about the transfer from the bank official, and she nearly refused to it until I insisted. I know they talk about fraud, but I was made to feel as if I could not look after my own business. Thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, this is quite a common situation. So what would have happened here is that this person went in to transfer a fairly large sum of money from their bank to another institution. Now, I understand, and we're all seeing texts from our banks warning us about fraud and all of that, but this was an in-person transfer. The customer was there in front of the bank official. So, I mean, it's understandable that banks want to protect us, but protecting us from ourselves when we make a financial decision to move from A to B really is inappropriate for them to do that. And for a bank official to basically nearly refuse to take your instructions is really unacceptable. But I feel there's another motive here, and that's got to do with the fact that banks are trying to, basically, possession's 9/10 the law. In other words, they don't want you to move your money, and they're going to make it as difficult for you as possible. And that's disgraceful. You're entitled to make your own decisions for yourself, and that's what this is about, not about fraud. And why are they trying to, I suppose, put barriers in your way? Because they want your business. They want to sell you something. And that's what they want to do. So, but I would just say to anybody listening this morning, and by the way, this is not something new. This has been going on for years. If you're going into a bank, you're making a transfer to do whatever, and if you get any, I suppose, kickback like this, don't accept it. You're the customer. Just tell them, instruct them, do as I instruct, and just kind of basically move on. And don't allow yourself to be intimidated, which seems to be what happened in this case.
Elsewhere, in other news, PTSB takeover could lead to expanded services at the bank.
Yeah, we've seen, I suppose, all the press publicity about the takeover by BAWAG. I don't know how they pronounce it, the Austrian bank.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, well, anyway, I think that's how it's pronounced. But I think this is a very, very welcome move. We haven't seen a foreign bank come into this country aside from the online banks, and I'm not talking about them. A bank with with a high street presence since before the financial downturn. And it's very much to be welcomed. We need competition in the retail banking market. We only really have 3 players, which is obviously Bank of Ireland, AIB and PTSB, although there's a 4th player that's creeping along nicely with their services, and that's the credit unions. But I think what could happen here is this talk that they might bring permanent TSB into commercial lending and have a kind of a corporate lending service, which would expand the services they provide. So it's very good news for us here to see more competition, and PTSB does need to expand its services dramatically.
And is part of that because of government's remit in terms of getting access to ATMs and cash for people?
Well, that's all part of it, yeah. I mean, very simply, we have a variety of different financial institutions. Some of them are, as you know, are based online, and they provide online services, and they do a good job of what they do, and there's plenty of competition there. But you also need the high street banks, the full retail banks out there, and it's really important that you have a healthy market where that's concerned, and not one that was, if you like, restricted to primarily the two big ones. And hopefully PTSB will provide more competition for them.
Elsewhere, $2.3 billion bet on oil price movements in April. Who is the fool here?
Okay, what are we talking about here? I mean, at the end of the day, one has to wonder well, you don't have to wonder. It's self-explanatory when I give you the details that Trump is opening his mouth and people around him are making huge sums of money over decisions he's making about the current war and its relation to the oil market. In the month of April, it was over $2.3 billion, if you like, as a bet on the price of oil. And if it was a share transaction or transactions on a publicly listed company, the authorities would be all over this for insider trading. But that won't happen in this case. To give you a simple example, on one evening between 7:54 and 7:56 our time, within 2 minutes there were over 4,000 trades in oil, totaling 430 million. And at 8:10, just approximately 12 to 14 minutes later, he announces that the ceasefire would continue indefinitely. Now, the people who took those positions in oil made a fortune, an absolute fortune. So you telling me that that's pure luck? Of course it's not. So he's feeding information to the people around him, and probably maybe even his own family and himself.
Is there any evidence of that, though? To be careful.
Well, no, there is evidence of it because these trades are there. They're in the public domain, So I think, I think it's a fairly obvious what's going on there.
I know some of the gambling addiction services have come out in recent days as well, calling for you not to be able to bet on sort of geopolitical stuff like this. Would that be a good move, or what are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, if you bring that, just to finish on that particular point, these are large institutions and people with large sums of money who are doing those trades. But bringing it down to what you're talking about, yeah, it would be. There's actually, there are certain companies out there will allow you to take a bet on virtually anything, political, elections, all sorts of things. And just to give you an example, there was a soldier who was involved in the raid in Venezuela. He has been arrested for basically insider trading. He bet on the fact that Maduro would be removed and brought. Believe it or not, he made nearly $400,000. So obviously he was part of the team that went in. So you can, it's crazy, you can bet on anything. Anyway, we better move on.
Another question. I am 65 and have an old life policy that has death cover only of €100,000. The premium is €160 per month and the policy expires in 2 years. Should I cancel it?
Well, look, I would have to say that the level of cover that you have and the cost of the policy, which is substantial, €160 a month, it's not good value. And the policy will be finished in 2 years, and you're at an age where you wouldn't take out new life cover. I suppose you could say it's bad value, and if you're prepared to just park it, save the premium and move on, and you don't really need the life cover, maybe you should do that. One other thing I just want to explain to is that this possibly might have been a whole of life policy, which means the premiums get more expensive as you get older. And there is also an idea sometimes people have, I've paid money into this policy for all these years, what happens, basically to the premiums I paid. It's life, like this type of cover, life cover is like house insurance, like car insurance. You make a claim or you don't make a claim. There's no investment in it. And the only way, unfortunately, a claim is made on a life policy is that you depart this world.
Okay. Another question. Is there any update on the savings scheme that will be announced?
A lot of speculation. There is no firm update. Sometimes people are asking, should I wait and make a financial decision and wait and see what happens with this scheme? And my answer to that is absolutely not. I think this scheme, we don't know the details, but it's going to be restrictive for a lot of people in one sense if they are very risk adverse. So I think the best thing is not to speculate, listener, any longer or listen to any of the media coverage, because until Simon Harris makes an announcement in the budget, we don't know. And by the way, it will be well into next year before any scheme is up and running.
Was all that kite flying helpful?
Well, I don't think it is, actually, because there's a lot of talk going on about tax and that. The devil is always in the detail in these things, John. But remember, they're politicians. They're looking for good sound bites for themselves. But I don't think it's helpful for the ordinary person to be distracted by this until they know the exact details of it.
Now, many financial articles on investments do not show the full picture of options, Dave.
Yeah, last week we did a piece, as you know, extensive piece on investments. And one of the things I notice is that when I read the financial press and read opinion pieces or coverage by financial journalists on the type of investments that are out there, the one thing I find that's shocking is they don't actually cover the full range of investments. And what am I talking about here? There are a whole range of protected investments out there. They're called structured products. A lot of people who listen to our piece here will have heard me mention them. And when I pick up an article in the newspaper and there's people there giving advice or outlining the type of investments that are available, they're never included. So I would just say, financial journalists, you need to educate yourself a bit better because the reader is not seeing the full picture when you cover this particular issue.
Another question in. My partner and I have 2 children and are not married. Neither of us were ever married. We have no will. What would happen if one of us died?
That's a very serious situation. And the first thing I want to say is, before I pass any comment on it, is you need to get yourself into a solicitor as soon as possible. Not having a will, having children and not being married, and I'm not suggesting or saying you should get married, that's a personal decision, but if one of you dies, well, then there's all sorts of ramifications. And when you die intestate, that is without a will, then there's a kind of a line of succession for the benefits in your estate, and that's got to do with family. So neither partner is married. If the mother dies, well, then you're talking with no will, then it could be going to her siblings. So you need to get yourself in, sort out a will as soon as possible and get legal advice.
Dave McCarthy of McCarthy Associates in Wookey, thanks for joining us on Galway Talks this morning. You can keep your texts and WhatsApps coming into us on 086 3833 553. Phone reception on 091 77 0077 and email comments at galwaybayfm.ie as well. Just to remind you that you can win a pair of tickets to Zach Bryan in Super Value Park